It's my DVD and Blu-ray update for April 2024. Hi everybody, and welcome to another DVD and Blu-ray update. So as I said in my last pair of updates, because I had to spread that over 2 videos, my thing for this year is to try and make a big dent in my to-watch pile. So I am watching more DVDs and Blu-rays than I have over the last year or two. Hence why it's only about a month since I recorded that, and I've got a big pile already to show you. So without any more ado, let's crack on. Okay, so first up is this film. This is called Frigid Fantasies. It's on the Jezebel label. It's a Spanish film. It is 57 minutes long, and I gave up on it after about 10 minutes. It was so poorly dubbed and poorly edited that I just couldn't be asked to watch it anymore. It doesn't help that earlier in the day I had watched, as I record this was actually yesterday, but I had watched another film which you're about to see, and it's a sort of very similar overall story but done in a very different way. But yeah, it was just so badly made, or at least this version of it. I don't, whether the bad editing was due to cuts or something, I don't know, but I just found it unwatchable. So yeah, Frigid Fantasies, rubbish. The film I did watch was All About Them, which is a French film. Can't remember the French title, and it's not written on the box. But this is a drama about two women and a man. So woman A is in a relationship with a man, but she's also in a relationship with woman B. Woman B then gets into a relationship with the man, and it's almost farcical at times, them trying to not let the other one know that she's seeing them, if that makes sense. So not letting woman A know that she's seeing the man, and not letting the man know that she's seeing woman A. And the story develops and it all comes to a head, and I won't say any more, but it was very well made, very well acted. Very good film. Nothing amazing, but certainly hugely watchable and held my attention throughout. This is Bley Rectory. So this was an interesting film. I basically got it because Reece Shearsmith's in it, of the League of Gentlemen, etc. Stylistically, it was very strange. So Bley Rectory is a rectory in Borley, funnily enough, in England, which I think is sort of on the outskirts of London. I might be wrong. Essex, so yeah, that sort of area. And it's fabled that it is the most haunted place in England. And basically this is sort of the story of it. So it's narrated by Julian Sands. And it's filmed, it's sort of animation but with live action. So it's all, I think anyway, filmed green screen, and then backgrounds are sort of painted in, if for want of a better phrase. And it's sort of done, literally is a history of how it's got this reputation and the investigations into it, etc. It was interesting. It was stylistically, it looked great, but because it's more of a documentary than a thriller or drama or horror or whatever, to me it didn't quite know what it wanted to be. It was sort of an acted documentary. It was quite strange to watch. There's nothing wrong with it. It just, as I said, I just struggled a bit trying to decide what it was. But it held my attention throughout. It's not massively long. It hasn't got a running time on here. I had to look it up, but I think it was only like 67 minutes or something like that. So it certainly held the attention, and it was interesting. It was just a bit schizophrenic, you know. It couldn't quite decide whether it wanted to be a documentary or a horror film, and so it didn't quite work on either. But yeah, interesting. This is Streaming of a White Christmas from The Darkness. So, end of 2020, we'd come out of lockdown, and The Darkness were going to perform a gig at the Indigo at the O2, which is the smaller room at the O2 in London. I've got a feeling, I might be wrong, but I've got a feeling it was sort of in aid of the NHS, and the tickets were going to NHS workers, but I might be wrong there. But anyway, at the last minute, we were put into another lockdown. So they did the gig, but with no audience, and they streamed it, hence the title, Streaming of a White Christmas. It's interesting, you know, I'm a big fan of The Darkness, so I have this on vinyl as well. It's an interesting experience. Musically, it's top-notch, perfect, you know, wonderful Darkness music, played brilliantly. And they do everything they can to make it a proper show. But it's a weird listen and a weird watch, because there's not the interaction with the audience, and it is very obvious. So at the parts where the audience would be singing along or clapping their hands or what have you, of course, there's nothing there. Whilst I'm sure people sat at home watching it were doing that. You know, there's no visual or audio evidence of that. And it makes it weird watch at times, but very enjoyable. And it's, you know, if you're a fan of The Darkness, get this. This is a film called Dressage. This is a French film. It was a bit weird. It sort of lost me a bit. So two women make a bet with a baron that they're going to corrupt two teenagers to ruin the family's reputation. And whoever wins will marry this wealthy baron. It's... The reason I'm hesitating is because it did, as I say, it lost me a bit. It wasn't overly, although there was lots of attractive people in it, it wasn't overly sexy, it wasn't funny, it wasn't dramatic, it was just okay, a bit bland, some themes that some people wouldn't like in it. Yeah, it was okay, but it's just nothing great. By contrast, L'Education en Glaze, I really enjoyed this. So, young girl, her parents die. She gets sent by her ward to this school in France. You know, she is French. Where they teach using the English style, which is lots of corporal punishment, etc. It's an all-girls school. There's also a runaway convict who is hiding out at the school disguised as a woman. It's basically the story of this girl's time at the school and the other students and what have you, and how it's all done. But it's just something about it just worked. It was genuinely quite funny at times. It was genuinely sexy. It was well performed. Yeah, that was a lot better. Education en Glaze. This little run of, apart from The Darkness, this little run of DVDs and Blu-rays all came from a sale of a site that specialises in this sort of film. So, hence why they're sort of very similar sexy films, because I bought a watch of them at the same time. Most of them are only like £2 each. This is a British film called Hide and Seek. No big names on it. The only sort of name is Hannah Arterton, who is Gemma Arterton's sister. Basically, two men, two women decide to set up a little commune away from a rat race, where they intermingle, shall we say, but live away from, no phones or TV or radio or anything like that. And it's just basically the story about them. At one point, Hannah Arterton's character ex-boyfriend comes to visit, and that, throws some spanners in works and what have you. But yeah, it was... dramatically, there's not a lot to it, but it's well acted, it's well performed, there's enough of a story to keep it interesting. It held my attention well. It was a decent enough film. This is I'll Never Forget What's His Name, which is a Michael Winner film from the 60s. So Oliver Reed plays an advertising executive who decides to give it all up and go back to writing for a magazine. But the boss of the advertising company that he works for, played by Orson Welles, wants him back and is trying everything to get him back. Mostly sort of negative things to force him back. Oliver Reed's character also has a few women on the go, and he finishes it with all of them. He's got an ex-wife and a child. It was fine. It was very much of its time. Acting was magnificent. Apart from the two I've mentioned, there's also Wendy Craig, Marianne Faithfull, Frank Finlay. It's a good cast. It just... Again, it was a bit schizophrenic. It wasn't overly funny, although it tried to be at times. There are times where it got very dramatic and shocking. It was a bit of a mixed bag. But if you like sort of 60s mod films, I don't mean mod as in like Quadrophenia mod, but, the 60s swinging, 60s scene type film and that sort of thing. It's okay. It's worth a watch. This is a version of Fanny Hill. I do have the BBC adaptation, which is a lot better than this, but this was fine. This also, Oliver Reed's in this as well, playing a very different character and much later in his life. Also Shelley Winters, Wilfred Hyde-White, and Lisa Raines plays Fanny Hill, who was gorgeous. So it's a story of Fanny Hill, who moves to London and becomes a prostitute, and then gets involved in various relationships, and it's her rise to fame, and that's basically, as far as I can remember, is what the book is about. I've never read the book, but having seen the other adaptation, is what the book is about. It's basically just her story. It was fine. Decent enough performances all round, very attractive women, getting naked a lot. Oliver Reed's performance was a bit OTT, but otherwise perfectly watchable, perfectly enjoyable. This is Joysticks. So this is a American Porky's Revenge of the Nerds type film. So it's set in an amusement arcade, hence the title. And the antics that happen there, and then the adults trying to shut it down who are against it. It was enjoyable enough. It wasn't hilarious, but it wasn't, terrible either. Cast were fine. Apart from Corinne Bora, who I like, if that's how you say her name. She was playing a Valley girl, and her accent was so over the top and exaggerated. I just found it really difficult to understand what she was saying for a lot of it, which was a shame. But otherwise, yeah, decent enough, switch off and watch type film. Jesus Christ Superstar. So again, this is all part of the same sale, but it's obviously a bit more highbrow. I love Jesus Christ Superstar, the rock opera. It is one of my favourite pieces of musical theatre. I have multiple versions of it on CD and vinyl. I have multiple versions of it on disc as well. I have the arena tour version, I have the studio based version that I did, and now I have the film. The film I've always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with. You know, performance-wise, music-wise, everything, it's wonderful and great, and everything I love about Jesus Christ Superstar. It's just so they do it, but the performers rock up in the middle of Tunisia, I think it is, or it might even be the Middle East, you know, Jerusalem type area, and you know, they're hippies and they all turn up in camper vans and what have you, and they put it on. You know, they act the story, and then at the end of it, they go back being themselves, and they all go home. But for some reason, Jesus stays, which I've never quite sort of understood. Yeah, it's just a little nag about it that's always sort of put me off the film. But I enjoyed it a lot. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 when I ranked it on Letterboxd and on my DVD profiler. And there's a few extras on here, but yeah, love Jesus Christ Superstar. This is Killer's Moon. So this was an English film. Yes, they call it Britain's answer to I Spit on Your Grave, only nastier, which isn't really true. So it's from the late 70s. There's a few people who you would recognise in it. Faye Weldon co-wrote it under a pseudonym. A group of schoolgirls who are going to a choir competition in... Does it say where it is? No, it just says remote hotel. I think it's sort of West Country area. Their van breaks down, so they end up having to stay in this house. But 4 psychiatric patients have escaped, and they were hypnotised in treatment, but when they were hypnotised and in a dream state, they could enact all their wild and nasty fantasies, but they would know that they were in this dream state and it wouldn't be real, but it would be enough to sort of satisfy their urges. But when they escaped, they were still in this hypnotised state, so they're going around killing and raping, etc., etc. Yeah, it was decent enough. You know, it was nothing that would win any awards or anything like that, but perfectly watchable. Again, cast were all fine. Some attractive women, some good effects. You know, the gore was gory enough and didn't look too fake. So that's Killer's Moon. A bit of TV. So this is series 2 of The Spanish Princess. So I watched series 1 18 months, 2 years ago, but now probably, which I've enjoyed very much, although it's sort of a cross between Game of Thrones and the Tudors without being anywhere near as good as either. Charlotte Hope is magnificent as Catherine of Aragon, and the rest of the cast are fine. The problem I had with the second series was that one of the highlights of the first series was Dame Harriet Walter playing King Henry VII's mother, whose name has gone out of my head. But she was sort of the villain of the series, and she was wonderful, and it was great. And yeah, she, you know, brilliant performance. But when I met her and spoke to her, she said she loved doing because of that. There isn't sort of an overall villain to this series. If Cardinal Wolsey's sort of the nearest, but you know, it lacks that cohesion. Also, there's sort of a bit too much time spent away from Catherine. So there's a lot, big chunks of it deal with Mary Queen of Scots and her story, which isn't really what you're watching this for. Still very good, still very enjoyable, just not as good as the first series. This is Satan's Blood. Oh yeah, I was trying to remember what it was about for a minute. So Spanish film. A couple are driving around, and this car pulls up next to them, and the driver claims that he went to school with the guy, and they're chatting, and he really can't remember him, but he sort of knows enough about the school that it must be true. So they go out for dinner, and then they go back to the stranger's house, and they're part of a devil worshipping cult, basically, and it's the story of that and what happens. Again, perfectly watchable, nothing magnificent, decent enough acting, fine. She Killed in Ecstasy. It's a Jess Franco film. So a woman, her husband is a doctor who, in order to, I don't remember exactly what he's trying to do, but he's experimenting on babies instead of, you know, using animals to test on. He's basically experimenting on babies. I think he's trying to wipe out a particular illness or something. So he gets struck off. It severely affects him, and he ends up killing himself. So she decides to take revenge against everybody who is she sort of classes as responsible, which sometimes involves seducing them first and then killing them. Very well done, very well acted. Again, decent enough. You know, none of these are wow, brilliant films, but they're all sort of 3.5 out of 5 films. Study in Terror. So this is John Neville playing Sherlock Holmes, investigating Jack the Ripper, which has been done 2 or 3 times on film. You know, versions of. As somebody who loves Sherlock Holmes and somebody who's fascinated by Jack the Ripper, right up my boulevard. Well acted, well performed, looks good. Judi Dench is in it, a young Judi Dench. Frank Finlay, Donald Houston, he's there. Anthony Quayle, can't say his name. Barbara Windsor. It's very much of its time. You know, any blood is sort of bright red. What do they call it? Something gore. Kensington gore. But yeah, very well done. Sherlock Holmes is a bit too jovial in this for my liking, but otherwise, yeah, perfectly enjoyable and watchable. A bit of TV. So this is Spoons, Series 1, but there wasn't a Series 2. So this was a Channel 4 sketch show, but I watched when it was on and enjoyed. And I enjoyed it again watching it. I think it was 7 episodes. So the cast are Kevin Bishop, Tom Goodman Hill, who is that one, Josie Darby from Children's BBC and Look Around You and various things, who I've always had a real thing for. Also Kerry Godliman, Rob Rouse, Simon Barnaby Jones, is that his name? From Ghosts and what have you. Rose thingy. And I can't remember her name. Anyway. What's her name? One of the writers is Charlie Brooker. It is very good and it is funny. However, pretty much they've got 10, 12 sketches which are based around a set of characters or a theme or something, and then they just repeat them week after week in different scenarios. So for example, one of the sketches is Tom Goodman Hill brings his new girlfriend home to meet his mother, played by Rose, whatever her name is, who basically just takes one look at him after being introduced and just slowly shakes her head, and he has to get rid of him, and that's it. Even, you know, no matter how far into the relationship they are. And it's just that sketch is done in every show, just with different women basically, and maybe in a different place. There's a twist on it at the end. Again, Rose, whatever her name is, Rosie, might be Rosie rather than Rose, as a character where she's married, well, presumably married to Rob Rouse, and it's, you know, what do you want for dinner, babe? Oh, I want a f***ing baby. And that's basically the sketch. And again, it's just different scenarios each time. And again, that's sort of played off at the end. And they do sort of, you know, develop it over the weeks, but it is really just the same joke, show by show by show. So by the 6th or 7th episode, you are starting to think, we need new ideas here. But it's very well performed, and as I say, overall I did enjoy it. So this is a box set of the 6 Mia Jovovich Resident Evil films. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I'm going to do a ranking, basically. This is What, which is a Roman Polanski film from the earlier... No, it's weird for dating on it. It's from 1972, but it was only released properly in full much later, sort of whenever this came out, basically. So it's an American tourist is on touring around Europe. There's an attempted rape, and she runs away and takes shelter in this villa, and this villa is occupied by all sorts of weird people, basically is the plot. It's very confusing. Nobody really, you can't really tell what's going on. It's quite funny in parts, it's quite sexy in parts, it's well acted, it's fine. Again, it's another, you know, 3 out of 5 easy to watch film. Nearly there. This is series 1 to 6 of 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. I have 7 and 8 separately, but I will eventually watch when I get to them. So it's a show that I sort of occasionally watched when it was on. It's a show where the cast is better than the material, but it's a lot of fun and it's easy to watch. So the cast are Catherine Drysdale, Sheridan Smith, Natalie Casey, Ralph Little and Will Mellor. Plus there's other people who come and go throughout the series, but they're the main cast. So Sheridan and Ralph are a couple. Very soon into the series, Will and Natalie become a couple. And it's just, you know, their stories basically of living working class people in Runcorn. Is it Runcorn? Somewhere. Yeah, Runcorn. Which is northern England, sort of Manchester-y type area, I think. Sorry for anyone who lives around there who's watching this. As I say, it's, you know, it's fine and it is very funny in parts. Some of it hasn't dated well. There's lots of jokes about Gary Glitter and Jimmy Savile and people like that who you don't joke about anymore. As things have come to light, and various other references that, unless you're around at the time, you probably wouldn't get. There's, you know, twists and turns, the sort of soap opera element of it, for want of a better phrase, is pretty interesting, and you do care about these characters, even though most of them have got very few redeeming qualities. Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's not the funniest comedy ever. It can be pretty lowest common denominator at times, but sometimes that's all you want out of comedy. Yeah, enjoyed it quite a lot. 2 more. This is Ammonite. So this is a film starring Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. So Kate Winslet, it's based on roughly on a true story. So Kate Winslet is, let's give her name, Mary Anning, who was renowned for finding fossils and, you know, dinosaur fossils particularly, and they would end up in the British Museum, and you know, she was held in high regard, but she was quite a reclusive character living down in the West Country. Saoirse Ronan has been ill. It's never directly said, but it's hinted that she sort of lost a baby. Visiting with her husband, who's interested in fossils, etc. He ends up having to go abroad, so she stays there, and he pays Kate Winslet to look after her and keep her interested and try and get some life back into her. And that works, basically, and they end up falling in love, the pair of them, and it's that story. But yeah, beautiful looking film, brilliantly acted. Yeah, really, really good film. And finally, Wonder Woman 1984. So, I didn't think this was as bad as people sort of made out. I mean, it wasn't wonderful or anything, and probably not as good as the first one. But it was perfectly enjoyable DC film. I, you know, couldn't overly criticise it. It is what it is. It's well performed. The recurrence or the reappearance of Chris Pine's character feels a bit shoehorned and it's never properly explained. But otherwise, the rest of it was fine, if you know what I mean. Don't think it's as bad as people made out. Wonder Woman 1984. There we go. That's what I've watched in the last month or so. If I'm carrying on at this rate, there'll probably be another video each month. I hope I do, because I've still got lots to get through. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks. Bye.